must be cautious.
Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Well, hello and welcome to Aggressive Negotiations, that little slice of Star Wars that you just can't get enough of. And I am just one of the hosts here, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing, and with me, as he is every single week, wearing our own merchandise, as in, quote-unquote, an in-universe Star Wars t-shirt, Jedi Master John Mills.
Well, it's all about branding, really, in Star Wars. As we all know, that Star Wars Cola is consumed by several of the characters, and they frequently look at the screen and wink. At least I've been told the characters look at the screen and wink. That's the same as looking just off camera, apparently. But,
exactly.
Outside of that really deep-cut reference for people who will have had to have listened to a show that I shuttered many years ago, I am pleased to be here, Jedi Master Rushing, and I'm actually excited because of what we're going to be discussing today.
I am too. We are going to be going through the second season of The Bad Batch. Of course, we just had the trailer drop as we're recording this for season 3, which both John and I are very excited about, that final season of The Bad Batch. Before we dive into that, of course, wherever you're listening, please subscribe, and that way you'll get our show as soon as it drops. Of course, you can also find us on social media. We would love it if you'd follow us over there on whatever they're calling Twitter these days, at the Jedi Masters. We've got the entire network you can follow at Join Nerd Party. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Nerd Party. We are online at thenerdparty.com. We're on Instagram at The Nerd Party. And it's the perfect way to be able to share the show, too. Word of mouth is a great way for a podcast to grow. And, there's a lot of Star Wars podcasts out there. But if you enjoy us, let people know it by saying, hey, listen to Aggressive Negotiations. But, John, the first episode of Season 2 of The Bad Batch is called Spoils of War. And, one of the things that I was really struck by in this episode was how tight the storytelling is, as it almost always is in Star Wars animation, but specifically here, the way in which everything that they're doing is building the fact that, this is the second season, some time has passed, Omega's grown a little bit, but every single part of this episode, it's like nothing is wasted. There's nothing about it that's not building towards things that are going to play out later in this episode, and then, of course, throughout the rest of the season, really. And so, really, it was just love rewatching this because you can see all the little places where they're kind of building in these moments that are going to build throughout the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, it's I almost use the word effortless, and that's untrue. I'm sure it is full of effort, but they make it look, to borrow a phrase, quote unquote, they make it look easy. And what I mean by that is, you're right. Coming back and looking at it, there were moments that I appreciated more on a rewatch, specifically because I know where it's going to go.
Sure.
And so what seemed in this first episode, with the brand new character voiced by Wanda Sykes flirting with Tech, thinking that's just a brash underworld type trying to throw him off of his game, saying, oh, this is not a wasted moment. This is not just fluff that's thrown in. This has purpose for the season. And even the way it opens, as all great Star Wars does, in media res, we don't see the precipitating event for the giant crab monsters to be chasing them, because all we need to know is relayed to us while they're running away. Wrecker did something wrong, although, I'll defend him here. It seems like he did it just right. But you find out that Omega's been studying since we saw her last, because she's sitting there studying, but like any kid, she wishes she wasn't studying. She wants to have fun. We even have that callback to the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark, when Jock is fishing.
Yep.
And she's sitting there at the ship that they're running toward with the natives attacking them and the fishing line in the water. Like, it's such a clever way to go. And I think to get to where you're going with it as well, is the decision to go back to Serenno is so smart, because for those of us who are long-standing Clone Wars fans, as all people should be, it's, oh, good, I get to go back to this place. I'm excited. But the way that it's done, it functions, and you know I'm a big stickler for this, and I want to get your thoughts on it. I feel it functions exactly the way a sequel story should, where you don't have to have seen a single thing. You know why Serenno is important, and you know their situation from the setup dialogue, and that's it. That's all. Like that's all you need. Like if you know who Count Dooku is, and you can just have watched the prequels and come right into this episode and you go, oh yeah, Count Dooku, I know who that is. And if it's your first time here, you're like, oh cool, they're going to Serenno. So like it works in that layered fashion. Do you agree that it works in that layered fashion, or do you think it's a reference too far?
No, I think it works in that layered fashion, and mainly too because like they let you know what Serenno is, just in case you haven't seen the Clone Wars. It was Count Dooku's planet. This is his castle. They let you know who he was and the fact that he was a Jedi that turned against the Jedi and the Republic and read the Separatists. Like everything you need is there. And of course, longtime fans, it's like, yes, we're going back to this place, and, we kind of see almost, somewhat the hypocrisy of the character who, has amassed these riches, and didn't really care about the galaxy. It seems like, it was really just all about him, which is kind of a classic Sith thing, right? It's really about what you're getting out of the deal. So I think it even builds into the Dooku story long after his death at this point. And so I think that's all great. And like you said, I think really the beauty here too is, yes, Omega is studying here, and that study is actually going to play into the rest of this episode, and give them an opportunity to be able to escape, because she remembers something from her studies that, the clones, because, they haven't been reading the tech manuals in a long time, they wouldn't necessarily have readily available in their mind, so there are all of these little bits and pieces that I think are growing. I mean, even here, the double entendre even of what Sid says, right, I think is excellent, in the sense that, she talks about, then you haven't been paying attention, and she mentions the Empire, right, but there's this undercurrent, too, of this control that she believes she has over the clones. And, of course, that plays into the rest of this season, right? But even that, there's even a third layer to that, because then there's the whole discussion there with Hunter and Echo about the fact that they could be doing more. That they shouldn't just be hiding, that they should use this treasure for the greater good of, trying to free the galaxy from the Empire's clutches. And, so what's crazy about rewatching this very short episode here is the way in which it is building for the entire season and this episode. And I think it's just really special because it shows how good the writers are, how good the creators are of this show, and they know exactly what they're doing in building this this first episode. But I think, too, the fact that this episode doesn't resolve itself in the first, 22 minutes also lets you know that things are getting worse. It's a great realization that, the other season, the last season, things mostly got resolved in one episode. Not anymore. The rest of the season, it's going to feel like there's a lot more connections to episodes, and a lot of things are just not going to be as easy for these guys as it used to be.
Well, I think there is a confidence, I think, just in this first episode, where I think that the creative team really expresses they know they got it done in season one, and this very much has the feeling of, I don't want to get too effusive in the praise sort of thing, but it's the feeling of an NFL team that went to the playoffs the previous season, and the staff is pretty much the same, and the players are all the same, and they come back and they have that first game, and it's like, yep, this is, they have, lack of a better term, there's a little bit of swagger in the sense that they have the confidence to end the episode the way that they do. They have the confidence to trust that everything that they're setting up leads to the moment where when that container is falling and the screen goes out at the end of 22 minutes, my reaction is no, I need the next episode. Like, on this rewatch, I'm being very disciplined and saying I'm not going to jump straight into the next episode. It was very difficult because it does exactly what a serial is supposed to do, which is leave me on a cliffhanger and say, well, wait, no, what's going to happen next? And there's a focus. I think what we're getting at here is there's a focus to the episode of the same way that I don't think it hit till about season 3 in the Clone Wars. The sense of focus that we're getting here, where right from the gate there is such an efficiency to the storytelling that, yeah, I mean, we keep coming back to it. There's not a single wasted moment here. There's not a moment where I say, oh, that was a great episode, but I didn't really care for that. Like, everything seemed to be the right length, the right amount of time. And even the conversation between Echo and Hunter didn't belabor itself. It set up everything. Hey, we should be doing more. Hey, she deserves a better life than this. Hey, what exactly is it we're doing with our lives? And so we know already the whole season is going to be focused on those three things from one conversation in a 22-minute episode. And frankly, let's set aside what was a big hit, what wasn't a big hit with us in terms of the live action. It's something where, once again, I look at this episode and I say, why is live action seeming to be struggling with this sometimes? To get, like, I got so much in 22 minutes here. Why is it that sometimes I'm watching like a 45-minute episode of live action and I'm like, well, what really happened? Like I'm like tuning out. I might be looking at my phone, but this, I'm there the whole time. So sorry to ramble. But that's just where I'm at.
Because I was taking in what you're saying, and I think, it's one of those things. Obviously, I think everybody knows that I'm going to agree with everything you just said, because we're on the same page in that. But I think one of the things that this does is that the beauty of where we are here with the Bad Batch is the way in which it's also creating synergy with other things that Star Wars is doing. And this pairs so well with Andor, right? In the sense that this is the beginning of the Empire. And Andor then, and everything we're doing here is then really even building into what you're going to see in that, right? It builds into the world you see in Solo and Rogue One, of course. And so, and then, of course, it helps build and further explain the universe that you are in when you get to A New Hope. And so I think that's one of the things here is, animation in so many ways has become the way to bind things together. Animation is almost like the force of the Star Wars galaxy in that way. And I think
I love the way you put that.
I was just, when I was saying it, I was like, oh, that's exactly what Obi-Wan says, about the Force and everything. And so it's like, but I think that there's it's so intentional, right? Like, you're talking about the intentionality here of the episode and what they're doing and how it's playing together and how it's all working together. But then when I think about this in the larger context, I think that's what makes it so great, is because I enjoy the Bad Batch for what it is, but then as a larger fan of all of Star Wars, I get to enjoy it in the way in which it informs all of these other areas that I enjoy, especially with what comes next. And whenever you're adding to a universe, you always want to make sure that the thing that you're adding to it with does give you a new perspective on the rest of things. Give you from a certain point of view, you can see things differently because now you have this new point of view that you've just been given. It's like writing a good Star Wars book, right? Both of us, I think, would agree the best Star Wars books make us look at the overall saga and different parts of that saga in new and fresh and different ways, and they then make you excited to go back and rewatch those things. And I think that's the thing that I'm finding and thinking about with this episode is just that I love how this is making me think, oh, I kind of want to do an Andor rewatch as well. You know, I kind of want to go back now, and I'm actually interested in diving into the original trilogy again, you know, and digging into Star Wars as we go through this. And so there's just, I think that's what makes this, you know, where we enjoy the animation. I think it's because in so many ways, you know, that's what animation at its best in Star Wars does.
Well, speaking of at its best, there are two things there. One of them being, I think that the cinematic nature of not just the editing, but the way that the shots are chosen.
Great point.
This is something where I think you and I have agreed that with the volume, things struggle sometimes because in a sense, the volume has to operate like animation, but it isn't animation. So there's this odd restriction that, like, choosing live camera focus pulls and shots. Like, I think there's one shot, and there are a lot of shots in this that I think are great. But like, even looking at one moment when Hunter and Wrecker, you know, land on the top of the castle, and Hunter looks up at the cargo ship going, and he's, you know, in the foreground, a little out of focus, and you see the cargo ship up there, and it looks exactly the way you would see like a live action composition. That frees up animation and makes it feel more real. Whereas it almost seems like there's this inversion with the live action stuff sometimes, not all the time, sometimes, where the planning necessary for that shot to happen with the fake background, it's like the live action people it's not processing in their brains the same way. It feels like a limitation as opposed to something that frees them.
Right.
But then the other thing, and I think this is incredibly subtle, is even with the changes in costume and everything, I think one of the reasons that you or even me looks at it and says, oh, this feels a little bit more like Andor, a little bit more like Solo, a little bit more like A New Hope, is the color palette shifts a little bit. The filters shift a little bit. And I think it makes a difference because even just with the way the colors come across, it conveys a sense of mood and spirit that really sets you up for what you're going to get. But you were trying to say something. I'm sorry.
No. Because it was just you sparked something in my brain. It's like, you know, one of the things about the volume, right, is that everything has to be perfectly lined up so that everything works in camera. And the moment you move the camera, everything then has to shift again so that all of the compositing on the screens looks correct and gives you the right depth perception, right? But the beauty of the animated world is it's more like live action in the sense that everything's real, quote unquote, inside the computer. So you can find the best angles you're getting. And yes, they're using the same type of angles that you would use if you were using real camera work. They're not cheating, right? That's one of the things that's made Star Wars animation so great, right? Is that they've used the same type of camera angles that, you know, George would have used throughout the entire saga that he directed. And so therefore you're getting that sense that you're almost in a live action type of shot. That whereas there is no play on the volume because everything has to hit that mark, and there's no movement in the sense of like you can't, again, we're referencing Andor, right? They built the whole town there. And so the actors could go whatever way they wanted and the camera would just follow them like real people would do. And so that's the beauty of animation, because that's the feeling you get, right? Because it has that reality, because in that world, everything is real.
You know, something you said is Lucas cheated a little bit once he got
It's true.
he got
It's
access
true.
to the cameras. And so I think the reason that you keep going to Andor and I mentally keep going to A New Hope is because even though animation can cheat that way, the choice is being made here to have the same visual language in a large sense that was there in the original trilogy, which is appropriate because as we're approaching that time period, it's like the decision in Rebels to make the sabers look more 1977 than what they can do now. Like the sabers now look, you know, like they actually exist, whereas that, you know, it's the glowing rod with the, you know, the rotoscoping and stuff like that, right? So I think that's definitely something where the visual language works so well. But I know that the production on this had some challenges with the voice work because they had to do a lot more remote work for this. What I find amazing, and I think this is a huge tip of the hat to everybody that was, you know, behind the scenes, or, you know, isn't, you know, in the starring credits sort of thing, is that there are live action productions that happened during the restrictions where you could tell. Obi-Wan, for instance, the Obi-Wan Kenobi series.
Oh, yes.
The sets aren't as populated as we want them to be. We could tell that the restrictions had an effect. Maybe this is something that animation benefited from, but there's no difference in performance or anything like that. And I know it's, you know, oh, well, you know, visually they can do that. But voice acting would have been so easy for that to be a little bit different. It would have been so easy for the direction, for the editing, for all of those things to be a little bit off. But instead, it seems to have tightened, right? It seems to have like really brought, you know, like it's almost as if some of the remote challenges made this team even better. Like, is that weird? Am I off base on that?
No, I don't think you're off base on that. I think the blessing for them is that, you know, so much of this show is done by D. Bradley Baker, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So him playing those characters is him playing off himself, right? And remembering what he did in that last take when, you know, he was Wrecker and now he's Hunter and everything. And so I think they're blessed in that sense. And therefore, and two, I think the other beauty in this is that, you know, I know that especially with the Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff, they would do those cast recordings together. They would try to be in the room. But one of the beauties of voiceover work is that they are used to being in the studio by themselves and then having the director give them the direction and the director getting exactly what they want for the scene. And so I think there's that's the key. But really, I think, you know, you can't say enough of just how good D. Bradley Baker is as these characters so that it feels so effortless. And I think everybody else then is really at the top of their game. And, you know, I never feel there being a difference in the performances whatsoever, even though they were probably having to be, you know, outside or, you know, with themselves more often.
What I think is also a very big tribute to the, you know, the staff that puts everything together, the direction, all of that sort of thing, is Wanda Sykes is not somebody that I would have said, oh yeah, that's a voice talent I would bring in. I'm taking nothing away from Wanda Sykes' career. I've always enjoyed her. I think she's funny. She's been a great comedic actress. Her stint on Curb Your Enthusiasm was wonderful. All of that sort of stuff. But I would not have sat there and said, oh yeah, bring her in. Like the same way I wouldn't have said that with Rhea Perlman. It wouldn't have occurred to me. So, I think the real tip of the hat has to be to her, but also to the people that recognized she would work in this situation. It's incredibly difficult. I agree with you. I mean, when you think about it, there's a significant stretch of this show where it is literally just D. Bradley Baker talking to himself. But it feels like every distinct character talking, whether it's a clone commander, Wrecker, Hunter, Echo, Tech. Everybody feels different, but it's literally just one guy being given a script and be like, "Hey, D, yeah, if you got a couple hours, we gotta knock this out." And he's like, "Yep, I got you." But I even though it's a very small piece of the episode here, Wanda Sykes, the vocal work, it's effective. Like I don't hear it and go, "Ugh, stunt casting. I don't want to hear this character again." It's, "Oh, I like this character. I like what's happening here." Did you have a positive reaction to Wanda Sykes too?
Yeah, I think the thing about her is that, she has, it's like Rhea Perlman in some ways. She has a fun voice, that kind of gives the character life. And I think one of the things, when you're casting somebody who maybe has a more recognizable name, is you want them to have a voice that kind of gives you a sense of who that character is right away. And I like that she's mysterious. She's a little bit mischievous sounding in this episode, and we're not quite sure what to make of her yet. And that's a great thing. I think one of the questions that I love about the episode, and when it leaves me with, is the question, okay, is this person who's a friend of Sid's, and Sid, who I'm getting some not so great vibes off of, is she going to turn out to be a foil in a bad way for the Bad Batch, or will she just be a one-off, or will she turn out to be somebody who's going to be helpful for them? And I love that in the performance here. I don't know yet. And it leaves me intrigued, though. So, no, I thought that, she was a great addition. I think another beautiful thing about this episode, too, just what we see here with our Clone Force 99, is their reluctance to, use force against the clones.
Thank you. Yes. Yep. I love that the stun blasts are in play. That they are like the clones that are in the service of the Empire are trying to kill them, but they still cannot bring themselves to hurt their brothers, specifically because they can't hold them accountable for it. They understand. They're like, these guys are just doing their duty. And yes, I couldn't agree more. I mean, up to and including, like, it's such a wonderful gag that the first person they stun, when he goes limp, like his head is inside the container, but like you see the rest. It's a beautiful moment because that's natural comedy. It's not forced. It's not an over-the-top sort of thing. And then you even have the comic thing, following up with it where, Wrecker's like, "What? I did it quiet." Like there's a Han Solo quality to him where he's like, "What? It's quiet. I'll do it real quiet." Like, and everybody else is like, "No, but you understand. You've actually just made life worse for us." Right? You get that, right? It's a natural comedic moment, though, which I think, again, gets back to what we started the whole conversation with about the efficiency and the focus of the storytelling. That it's not a forced comic moment. There are so many movies, including, and I'm not going to re-prosecute anything here, but including a couple of more recent Star Wars movies where there are forced comic moments. And it's just like, they're groaners. It's like, you try, like, you grafted that on. Whereas the humor in this, from that stun blast moment, from, Wrecker as they're running away in the beginning, being like, "What? I got it." there's a legitimate comedy to it that endears these characters to you.
No, I mean, it's funny because, you know, as you were saying, you know, you're not cheating, you know, you're not moving forward. We're going to be watching this, you know, one episode at a time. I'm doing the same thing, and I was almost tempted, you know, to let the Disney Plus let me go to the next episode. And so, but, you know, I think also watching this, well, the one thing, you know, they just brought out The Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2 on 4K.
Yeah.
And it makes me hope that we are going to get the final season of the Clone Wars in 4K. We're going to get the seasons of the Bad Batch in 4K. In fact, if you're smart, what you do is, you know, season 3 is about to come out, and by the end of this year, maybe around Christmas, you're smart and you put out a big old Bad Batch box set of all 3 seasons. And
behind the scenes interviews.
Exactly.
Give me those behind the scenes interviews.
Yeah. So you do that, and it's going to be on every Star Wars fan's Christmas list. And so, but I mean, this is a great start to the season. But I think one of the things that you mentioned, and I kind of love, is that when they go back to Ord Mantell, there's like a moodiness there. Mm-hmm. That you can just, it's almost palpable, right? And I think it lets us know that this season we're kind of in for basically the Empire Strikes Back season of the Bad Batch. And I like that. I like the subtlety of it, and I can't wait to continue, you know, watching through this show. You know, as we're going, you know, we're going to hit, of course, the 3rd season, and we'll be continuing the second season a little bit into that. But, you know, we hope you enjoy us talking through the episodes as we get ready. And John, you know, if people wanted to catch up with you, of course, see what else you've got going on, maybe talk about excitement for Bad Batch Season 3, where would they find you?
Well, you can send me messages online to help my wife be okay with the idea that I want to get a 99 in the Clone Force 99 style tattoo. She's not a fan of tattoos. I have 2. She's sort of drawing the line. Help me out, folks. Help me out. Convince her I need that 99 like Wrecker has on his helmet, please. You can find me online as Kessel Junkie, and you can also find me right here on the network, co-hosting a show called House Lights, where we talk about different movies. Well, a podcast about movies. Who figured? And I co-host that with Tristan.
That's,
you know, we're
novel.
Blazing new. Yeah. We're blazing new ground with that. You know, like we're going out. We're doing something novel. We think the time is right to talk about movies on podcasts. Honestly, that's really, you know, we knew there was a market for it, and it just was untapped. But I do that with Tristan Riddell and Darren Moser, and you can also find me occasionally sitting in the you know, it's either the Norm stool or the Jim J. Bullock Square over on the 602 Club on the TFM network, which, you know, I know is one of the 453,000 podcasts that you're on, Mr. Matthew Rushing, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing.
Yes. And I hope people will check that out. We always have a blast over there, and it's been a lot of fun. In fact, we started off the year together. They're talking about Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon, so that was a blast. You can, of course, find me all over social media under the name Matt Rushing02. When I'm not here on the Nerd Party Network doing aggressive negotiations, you can find me doing Owl Posts with Dre Kaufman as we're talking through and talked through every single chapter of the Harry Potter series. Over on the TFM network, doing a bunch of other shows as well: Literary Treks, The Orb, Warp 5, Saddle Up, and The Artificial Tango. But, John, you know, I am starting to hear some rumblings that they are giving away free lightsaber crystals at the Jedi Temple. So I think it's time to close these negotiations.
Oh, my gosh. I want to get whatever crazy colors aren't canon anymore. I want to get them. I want to get them while they're giving them away. So, Master Rushing, these negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.